Penguin Random House Audio presents The Grandmother Plot by Caroline B. Cooney. Read for you by Jon Orsini. For my own Freddy, and in honor of my mother, Martha Bruce, who faced her fate so bravely and with her beautiful smile. Tuesday. 1. Freddy rode his bike instead of taking his grandmother's old Avalon or his grandfather's old pickup. He raced happily up narrow back roads, wrapped in old stone walls, and took the sharp curves at high speed. For 9 miles, orange and red leaves drifted down on his shoulders and spun under the tires. Great trip. The destination? Not so much. He was headed to Middletown Memory Care, an institution that was not in fact caring for memories. They were caring for people who had once had memories and would never find them again. In a vehicle, he'd arrive at MMC from Route 9, but bikes weren't allowed on the divided highway. He ended up west of MMC in a neighborhood of tiny old houses, cramped lots, and street parking on short one-way roads. The houses favored fencing, and there were chain link and white picket, bamboo and cast iron, everybody safely tucked into their little kingdom. Each garage was a separate little building in the backyard. Freddy entertained himself by planning how to convert the garages into glass-blowing studios. Ahead of him was a 4-way stop. Freddy was pretty casual about stop signs, on the theory that they didn't apply to bikes, but he did slow down. Coming from the right, braking for the stop sign, was a white Toyota Corolla. The driver's window was down and his elbow halfway out of the car. He was looking straight ahead and had not glanced in Freddy's direction. The profile was unmistakable. It was Doc. Doc? He was supposed to be in Vegas. What was he doing in a plain little city in Connecticut? He's not going to kneecap me, Freddy told himself. It's not as if I owe money. I just push paper. Still. Freddy swerved into the first driveway on his right, hoping for a fence-free escape route. The house sat close to the street, and almost immediately, it protected him from view. There was fencing, but just 6-foot chain link to keep a dog in. The dog raced back and forth, barking. Freddy rode between shrubs into the yard directly behind. Here, a vegetable garden was fenced, but not the driveway, so he zipped down it and came safely out on the parallel street. He turned left to emerge behind the Toyota and get a second look at the driver. The intersection was empty. Either Freddy had conjured Doc out of thin air, or Doc had driven on. Freddy zigzagged uphill to the low brick buildings of MMC. He locked his bike behind the stinking dumpster in the row of massive, never-pruned rhododendrons, where it couldn't be seen from the road or the parking lot. He did this a lot because he liked alleys, but now on the remote chance that Doc really was out there. Doc was not a guy you wanted in your life. He'd been in medical school years ago and got caught with marijuana in his book bag, back when possession was a crime and not a recreational puff. He ended up with a jail sentence instead of an MD. Doc was furious and bitter every hour of every day. Society had screwed him because of a handful of dried-up flowers, turned him into a felon with a record because back then, the world didn't rank marijuana the same as coffee or cigarettes. Doc's hobby these days was mixed martial arts, a violent, full-combat sport popular in certain pipe circles. It had not siphoned off his anger. Freddy went in through the employee's entrance, which was supposed to be locked. In good weather, though, they propped it open for fresh air, which was in short supply in a place that smelled of cleaning fluids and old bodies. He preferred to skip the front desk, because they liked you to sign in, and Freddy was opposed to any kind of regimentation. 2 aides were heading for the staff room. "Hey, Grace," he said. "Hey, Mary Lou." Grace was short and squat, wore her hair in a crew cut, and today sported filigree earrings dangling to her shoulders. Mary Lou was slender and pretty, but always smiled carefully, embarrassed by missing teeth. She was saving up for dental work. They both had circles under their eyes. He told them how beautiful they were, because it boggled Freddy's mind that anybody would actually do this for a living, and the women were beautiful in his eyes, no matter how overweight or underweight, no matter how tired or bedraggled. They didn't yell at him for coming through the employee's entrance because he was the only young man who visited, and they loved him for it. Grace and Mary Lou were on break, or they wouldn't be in this part of the building. Listen, if he worked here, Freddy would be on break the whole shift. He headed to the locked door that led to the residence wings and tapped in the code that opened the door. He walked through the big common room full of aides, dining tables, sitting areas, visitors, and residents. He didn't see Mrs. Maple, who generally visited her Aunt Polly the same time he was visiting Grandma. That was too bad, because Mrs. Maple was his first line of defense against the horror of dementia visits. In Grandma's wing, Jade was working. She was a few years older than Freddy, and why she didn't get a restaurant job or a grocery store job or anything at all except taking care of his incontinent grandmother, Freddy didn't know. He asked once, and she was surprised. "I like this," she said, and didn't seem to be lying. "Hi, Jade," said Freddy. "Miss Cordelia doing well today," said Jade. "Hey, great news," said Freddy, except that Grandma doing well simply meant she'd had lunch. Freddy found his grandmother in her little room, where the single shelf held photographs of the husband she no longer remembered. Jade had dressed her with care in a pale yellow sweater, a soft gray skirt, and a necklace of Freddy's glass beads that his ex-girlfriend, Cynthia, had strung together. The color range was apricot apple, using an early swirl technique that Freddy would execute a lot better if he were making it today. "Hey, Grandma," said Freddy. He knelt down in front of her so she'd see who was talking. Her face lit up, which meant she knew him, and Freddy felt his own face going happy. She said, "Arthur," in that eager, breathy voice. Freddy took her hand. It was frighteningly thin, toothpick bones draped in saggy skin. She no longer had any grip, so it was like a piece of paper resting inside his own calloused, burned, hard palm. Right up until last week, his grandmother could remember his name. And then last week she said, "Arthur, dear, did you have a good lunch?" Arthur was Grandma's son. Died in Vietnam. So long ago Freddy couldn't even remember the decade. But Arthur's death was burned in Grandma's soul. Freddy didn't mind being Arthur. At least she knew he was family. The activity director scurried up. Heidi's amazing enthusiasm penetrated even the most comatose dementia patients. "Freddy, yay, marvelous to see you. We're playing ball. Let's you two join us." Playing ball when you were deep in dementia involved using a foam noodle, like for a swimming pool, as a bat. You whacked at a heavy-duty balloon, generally bright red, so that even a really vague person could spot it. Half the residents were too vague even for that and just sat there. Half really got into it, whapping the balloon across the room to another patient, who would not notice or else swing hard but miss. Heidi would cheer, "Go, Edna! Yes, Herbert! That a girl, Betty!" Respectively, Edna, Herbert, and Betty had been a history teacher, a civil engineer, and a bank executive. What had Grandma been, exactly? She had never held a job, never had that thing called a career. The list of her achievements was homely. Typing up the stencil for the church bulletin and running the mimeograph machine. Chair of the church fair for decades, every year stitching up a couple dozen aprons to sell, each with pockets and bibs and matching potholders. She'd been on the library
Sample complete. Ready to continue?